ladies and gentlemen, to eSports Report. Currently going through all of the Season 3 relegation tournaments, taking a look at our 8th and 7th place teams. Time to move on to 6th place, and we're going to jump right into it. Synrgy Gaming, record 2-2, map record actually negative at 7 and 8. Obviously, you got Miyagi, Pac-Man, Legal, and Ivy. I've got to say, very, very impressed from what I saw from Pac-Man. Kind of answered a lot of his critics.
Yeah.
He's kind of created this army of support in every stream now, which is super kind of ironic, I guess, because people used to kind of roast Pac-Man. He's like, hey, you suck, man, you suck. Whereas now it's like, yo, I hope Pac-Man wins. I support Pac-Man. And to be fair, you know, had a great event. Just unfortunately, as a team, they fell rather short of qualification. We'll take a look at how they performed in every map type, or game type rather. Hardpoint was 2 and 4, a score difference of -19, and a team KD of 0.97. So, JP, a little bit bigger of a score difference there than what we've seen so far, but ultimately, you know, -2 to 4. I mean, that's you got to be winning those map ones.
Yeah, those. No, it's also map 4
map
too.
4 as well. Yeah, that's a good point.
So those two maps are huge in this, and the hard points. I think the hard points were almost more important than the S&Ds in this tournament.
Yeah.
Because you start off on that foot, the 1-0 or 0-1, sets the tone for the rest of the series, and you have 2 of them. We're going into the uplink, they were 2 and 2 with that game mode. Score difference of almost 5 or -4.
Wow.
Which is actually
that's
pretty big for uplink, and I don't know how they were able to have a 2 and 2 record.
2 going.
They must have dominated one team and got dominated. I guess the Optic Nation. 14-6 or something like that, with a .92 team KD.
They also went negative in both respawns.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to win series like that.
Oh, no, not at all.
Of course. And then Max, taking a look at Search and Destroy, they're actually positive in this at 3 and 2. Score difference was even, and the team KD, not the EAM KD, was a 0.94 for them. So actually negative in every single game mode as a team.
Yep. So really surprising. I mean, to go negative every game mode and then finish 6th.
Yeah.
I guess pretty good. I mean, you didn't qualify, but you got 6 going negative in every game mode, so good for that.
I guess S&D was their
I guess.
Congratulations in the relegation tournament.
S&D was just their saving grace, man.
S&D. Saving grace. That's the silver lining.
Yeah, but take a look at their weakest player.
Okay, who we got?
Gonna point fingers at Miyagi.
Oh!
Sorry, Miyagi.
Point those fingers. Pow, 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 my cadoolies.
0.89 overall KD, and just really underperformed in respawns, JP, with a 0.93 HP KD and then a 0.77 uplink.
Yeah, those, you need to be outslaying, and he was one of their, like, support slayer type roles. I mean, if you're having a 0.89 KD overall, it's just not what you want.
How do those statistics kind of compare to Miyagi in kind of past events? Is that kind of significantly lower than what we used to with Miyagi, or is that...
It's weird, because we haven't really seen him too much in AW. We saw a lot of him in Ghosts.
Right.
But we haven't seen him too much in AW, which is weird. But 0.89, and you're supposed to be kind of like that main slayer for that team, is just 0.77 in uplink as well. That's just... You're not going to win games like that.
I get that. They're
straightforward.
Even in uplink, but losing in scoring.
Yeah, we'll go on to the standout player, which I gave Pac-Man just because of his Search and Destroy.
Pac-Man.
His Search and Destroy plays. He shined in Search and Destroy at 1.19 S&D KD.
It's impressive.
That helped them get that 3 and 2 Search and Destroy record, which basically saved them from all those loser bracket matchups. And he also had a 1.03 uplink KD with 1.25 caps. I mean, 2 game modes he's doing well in. I think he had like a 0.95 in hard point, so not a bad event in the respawns, but he really shined in that S&D, and that's why I gave him that standout player.
So does this kind of, I don't want to say validate Pac-Man a little bit more in AW, but I mean, Max, he played very, very well, had some great performances. A couple of guys saying Pac-Man better than Aches in the chat. But does he kind of, I don't want to say brush off some poor performances, because to be honest, I think one of the things with Pac-Man is he's only had poor performances in certain maps, as opposed to like overall events. I think he only had like one bad event throughout the year so far.
He had one really bad event.
Yeah.
Which one was it? Was it Champs qualifiers?
I don't remember.
Or was it?
All I remember is he had one really atrocious event. But I mean, this event kind of shined.
Well, I mean, this goes back to that whole conversation, like players who are relegated to a certain like standard of playing with different players. Pac-Man trying different players, finished 6th. Like, good for him. He didn't quite qualify.
But again, I feel like that isn't necessarily true with the relegation tournament because you finished 6th out of basically all the worst teams. The top 8 teams in North America and the world, to be fair, weren't at that tournament. So if you imagine all 8 of them finish above them, it's like, well...
So it's basically like
basically
top 15 team
you finished top
in the
15.
game.
Well, I mean, if you look at this team, Ivy was playing on ISO for a little bit in AW back during like Season 2 relegation.
Okay.
Didn't quite qualify. Pac-Man obviously started out on Rise. You know, didn't qualify for champs. Was let go, and then like look at Miyagi. Like, what has Miyagi really done in AW? He teamed with Echo for COD Champs qualifiers.
He has been really quiet.
Didn't do anything at COD Champs qualifiers. I believe got double first rounded with Echo.
And wasn't he on the Noble squad at the end of Ghost with Slasher, Chino, Miyagi, and somebody else, and Sender. He was on that Noble
was
squad.
that team. Yeah.
And he's just been like,
is it?
I don't know, like
What is
disappeared.
it? Why has he had a bad year? Do you reckon? Is it kind of the new mechanics of the game?
I don't know if it's that. I think it's just
Because we've definitely seen a lot of old players struggle.
Oh yeah. I mean, I wouldn't really call Miyagi old.
I know. I mean, kind of like veteran.
Right.
Players. Not necessarily just old by age, but.
I mean, Miyagi's like an interesting story. I don't know if he did. I wonder if he took time off during like a certain like period of the game. But I mean, it's like looking over Miyagi and then going to Legal. Like Legal is a player you look at and you're like, okay, like where did Legal go wrong? Because that Prophecy team in the beginning of AW was good. Legal, Fierce, Parasite, and Ricky.
Yeah, it was really.
That team was good. I mean, then they banned like Cloak and stuff, and like everything changed.
They
but
just banned everything.
Basically, everything they used to be good went.
Right. And then like he was on Season 2. He was on Rise for the beginning of Season 2, and then was let go from there. So. I mean, I think Legal's really the player you look at and like, okay, well, you know, really what went wrong for him? I guess in terms of his AW season, because it's been on a steady decline, in my opinion.
That's a kind of valid point.
It's kind of weird too because he was their OBJ support role on that prof squad with Ricky, and then you have Pac-Man, who was always some type of OBJ for Rise, and Ivy was really doing well in the respawns and OBJ wise as well. So I mean, is it just like a lack of slaying ability?
Who was the main battle?
I feel like it kind of is. I mean, look at Swanee started this game. I mean, 10-9, not exactly playing out of his mind, you know, and you can see kind of just how close this game is. You see, he's actually in the lead, 65-58. As soon as Swanee kind of steps things up, you can see just how kind of drastically out of control this game actually gets. Epsilon's up 2-1 as well, so bear that in mind. Synrgy really fighting for their lives. And, you know, Pac-Man kind of leading the team there at 15-13. Ivy, 16-13 as well. So both of those two putting up some big numbers. And what's really surprising is actually Remy on Epsilon. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But he's very, very slow starting in this one. But again, we kind of talked about it with the other teams. Anyone on this Synrgy team kind of stand out to you? Do we see any of these players in Season 3? Do they somehow scrape in, or are we potentially looking at who's going to be warming the bench?
No, I think they're going to be. I don't see them.
Pac-Man's going to be a sub for some team.
Yeah, they'll be subs.
Sub for TCM? That'd be really ironic again.
Again, yeah.
So you don't see any of these players?
I don't see them breaking in.
No way.
No way, man.
Unfortunately.
What makes you say no way? That's bold. That's kind of brutal.
Yeah, I mean, Ivy. I mean, I can't see someone picking up Ivy over other players for the top 12 teams. Like, like your denials, your phases, like they're not making a roster change. Elevate. I mean, they're like, we'll get into roster mania later, but like if you
Elevate's LF2.
Right, like Elevate has 2 spots to fill. I don't think they're looking at Ivy. You know, are they looking at Pac-Man? Probably not. Miyagi, no. Legal, no.
I mean, Legal has had his moments in AW.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like not really his mistake, was like where he kind of went wrong was splitting up from Fierce. Because Fierce, like, in terms of like a Call of Duty player, has been known to be a dominant slayer. Like Fierce can step up and slay, and he can just own a game. But you know, Fierce played with what, DT Blue?
Then I'm saying, well, where is Fizz now?
Right, Fierce on DT Blue, right? They kind of split up.
It's not exactly like, you know, one half of the duo went off and is having great success winning championships.
Right.
They're both kind of fighting to get into the league.
Right, so...
Would they have been better if they stuck together?
I mean,
They could find the two right teammates.
in terms of like
maybe.
chemistry, yeah, I'd say their chemistry would be way better than I would assume their chemistry for this team. But I mean, well, that first team was what for Rise? It was, I know for a fact it was Fears Legal. What was it? It was Legal, Chino, Perplex, and Vex, right? I believe it was Perplex, Vex, Chino, and Legal, right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Why not? We'll go with that.
I mean, like when you look at that roster, you're like, okay, like why are these players teaming with each other? Like this team is not going to work.
But then I feel like that's what you kind of like. You look at this Synrgy team. You look at that and you're like, well, is this really going to work?
I mean, that's
I feel
a lot
like
of
that's the
teams
story,
other
right?
than Optic. It's just like, is this team going to work?
Which is again why I don't think there's any point in increasing the league, because you have all these teams where it's like, well, is this really going to work? Like, can you honestly look at this team and be like, yeah, this team is gonna consistently place inside the top 5? Like, no, I feel like there's not that many teams you can really say that about.
Nope.
And
Well, we did see something with TCM. I mean, a lot of people called them not even making top 8, and they get, what, 5th in the league?
Yeah, and
but then what happens at X Games?
Exactly.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
They pooped the bed and dropped their best player. Good play.
And they were in a team house the
Logical.
whole season 2. So.
Right. I mean, don't get me wrong, they definitely improved the play style.
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. One thing a lot of people kind of tweeted at me when we were on that kind of league discussion was, would it make sense to expand the league to, I think someone said 24 teams, which I think is already...
24?
Well, bear with me.
That's a lot of stats for you, JP.
Yeah, that is.
JP's like 9. I mean, let's pick a more manageable number. Let's say we expand it to 16 teams, right?
16 looks.
But rather than have it all in one league, we kind of do 2 conferences. So kind of like how American football is done. We have 2 conferences, kind of like the East Conference and the West Conference. And the top 4 from each conference then go on to play at the finals. Would that solve connection issues, where you have only the West Coast teams playing West Coast? Maybe you need a majority of players to be from that location to validate it being a West Coast, because then you don't have that kind of like basically who's going to try and host molest the other team. You know?
Right.
Like everyone in the chat knows what I'm trying to say, but you kind of avoid those situations, I guess, because it's East versus East all the time and West versus West all the time. So you kind of get away from that, and as well, I feel it helped build storylines a little bit more. I mean, JP, what do you think?
That's a really interesting system, but I feel like you should have the top teams all in the same conference playing together. I don't see why you should have 2 separate conferences with maybe.
But you don't think that would make it more interesting?
It would make it more
You go
interesting.
into Worlds and you're like, all right, this is the best team from the East, this is the best team from the West. Well, we don't see them play that often.
The thing is, let's say you have Optic in the East and let's say FaZe in the West. FaZe doesn't play Optic at all in the league.
But
so you get
in American football, the
experience.
East teams play the West teams, do they not?
Yeah, so like the way American football works is you play team in your division twice, once at home, once at away, and then you play a different division from the other conference.
Okay.
And then you play the whatever place you finished last season. Like say you finished second, you play all the teams that finished second last year in their divisions as
All right,
well.
well that's stupid.
Right.
So
yeah.
let's say we change that to so let's say JP, you're the West, and Max, you're the East. Let's say you play 2 games. You play 2 games against the other teams from the opposite conference.
Oh, so we're able to play against the other conference.
Yeah.
So you have 1 at home, 1 away, so host isn't too crazy. But then you play against the other teams in the league maybe 3 times.
For some reason, I was under the impression that you were just playing within your conference.
I guess you could do it that way.
That's really interesting.
Here's my issue with it. I mean, however we seeded the groups or however we made the 2 conferences, I mean, if it's done by pro points, you're pretty much going to have the same thing where it's like OG.
How do you mean if it's done by pro points?
Like, okay, so if we see first team of pro points goes to this one, and then the second goes there.
But I feel like you couldn't do that because then the only reason I would do this would be to try and neglect online.
But my issue is like if you split the teams up, like if you take a look at the NBA, right? The Eastern Conference in the NBA, the team who
so much worse.
is so bad compared to the Western Conference. Like the teams who finish 1 and 2 in the Eastern Conference will finish like 6th or 7th in the Western Conference.
There would be so much controversy. I feel like because what if you have the top 4 teams in that Eastern Conference, and then you have a bunch of other teams in the other conference, and maybe that 5th team in the first conference is better than every single team in that other conference. It just
It's interesting.
It's very
But I mean, it
controversial.
happens in sports, though, right? There must be a case where you look at like basketball, or even football, and you're like, well, this team is clearly much better than this team, and they made the playoffs.
It's
really
just
make
a
any sense.
controversial system.
But I feel like that's what Call of Duty needs.
It needs
storylines. Exactly. Like, the storylines are huge. It's like people saying, "Oh, expand the league just because." It's like, well, no. The fact that a couple of world champions didn't make it to the league is like storyline.
I like the Premier League approach that you're taking, where you go like Division 1. Because I feel like the bottom 4 teams, they're relegated to Division 1 or whatever, and then that's where they play for that season.
Then you don't have that play-in tournament, which we have now. It's just like you messed up. Now you're playing with.
Plus, would it all be online?
You're playing with semi-pros. You need to finish top 4.
But then
no, you have an event for.
But then
too.
I feel like
you would have everything would be on LAN or something?
No, I'm saying you have the online tournament, but you like the online season, but you would have a LAN event championship for it as well.
Yeah, but you'd have the championship, not the relegation. See, that's the thing. Okay. The first thing to note is relegation tournament doesn't actually make any sense. Like when you look at like what it means, that doesn't actually. It was a play-in tournament, it wasn't a relegation tournament. The teams have already been relegated, but that's neither here nor there. But I feel like if you just said you finished bottom 4 in the the Division 1, and then the top 4 from Division 2, if you just swap them, I feel like that creates such a weird dynamic that you're going to see even more team changes than we already do.
Right, but that's where you see teams like QPR and like. I guess teams like
I don't know. I would kind of like to see
more soccer, more soccer arguments.
But I feel like most North Americans don't understand how that works. It's like if you look at all North American sports, done a very similar way, I guess. Like as opposed to European sport, like it's completely. Like I was like, why the hell did you do it this way? This is dumb. Like why do you put everyone in one league and play each other and buy?
Yeah,
makes more sense.
You crap the bed, you go to the worst league. That's how it goes.
But anyway. We went on a little bit of a rant there.
Sorry, QPR fans.
Sorry, QPR fans. Max roasted you all. Right, that was a look at Synrgy Gaming. They had a really bad event. They're another team who probably won't stay together for very long. But up next, we get to a team which is very interesting and not where I thought I would be saying them. We're going to have a look at Prophecy Team, exactly where it all went wrong for them after this quick commercial break.